swine foot raid, waist gun. That was the greatest aerial craft in Europe being born. And he was right there. This guy here, his father, was a tail gunner in a P-17 709 squadron, my squadron, in Europe. Now, first off, I appreciate you all being here, and I especially appreciate the opportunity to tell you the experiences that we had, a couple of missions in World War II. Got my family here, so be careful because they might stand up on me if you guys take a shot at me. But I'm a lucky guy. I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I'm 90 years old. I just turned 90 on this last Mother's Day. I was born 1921 on Mother's Day, 8th of May. D-Day, 6th of June, just passed us, was my last mission. I was over the invasion, my B-17 on D-Day. I was a pilot, B-17, like Chucky, but mine, I actually had 3 of them. My favorite one was a feather merchant, and quite an experience, 30 missions. Feather merchant and Chucky had a 10-man crew and 13 50 caliber machine guns. These machine guns were so good that the military still uses them today. We flew a formation, you can see the little black dots up there, of around 18 to 21 airplanes, and each one had 13 machine guns. So that was our defensive shield. If you can just imagine what the Germans were faced with, their 250 50 caliber machine guns in that formation. I flew 30 combat missions in Europe. I was shot at, shot up, but never shot down. And there were quite a few. Actually, the 8th Air Force took more casualties in World War II than the whole United States Navy. But it was a cleaner war. We wore Class A uniforms, and the only time that we got dirty was when we hit Germany, when we landed in Germany. And that was a pretty rough code. They didn't like us very much, for obvious reasons. The parachutes, I gotta mention parachutes. We all had parachutes, but the gunners' guns were right in front of them, 2 50 caliber machine guns, and the parachutes were chest packs. So they couldn't wear parachutes while they were firing the guns, right? They had to put the parachute on the floor of the plane. Some of them tied it with a rope or something so that they could pull it in, because usually when a plane was shot up, it got out of control. It was like being inside of a washing machine or a dryer. And these guys had a tough time. I've seen them come out of the tail of the plane, holding the parachute by the ripcord, or not having one at all. So keep in mind, when you think about those gunners, except the pilot and co-pilot, we had parachutes. I had a backpack, and I was small enough I could get between the 2 armor-plated seats. My co-pilot had a chest pack. Let's see. Equipment. Now the B-17 is very cold. It's not pressurized. And when you got up to about 21,000 feet, you were faced with temperatures up 40, 45 degrees below zero. So we had to wear equipment for that. The problem was that you had to put that equipment on the ground, and by the time you got started up and taxied out and took off, you were probably so wet that the water would freeze on your eyebrows and your nose and things. when you got to altitude. It was a very uncomfortable thing. Can you imagine what this guy was faced with? Standing in an open window, not like the one out here, an open window with a 50 caliber gun and all that equipment on, and cold as hell. He can tell you about it. And the intercom, one thing about the intercom was that only one person could talk at a time. It's not like today. When we had 10 intercoms, when one pushed the button, it blanked the rest of them. So as Gary gets into it, you'll see where the interruptions of the intercom really messed up things. Our first mission that I'm going to talk about was to France. It was actually, we were stationed here, and the buzz bomb was right here at Pas-de-Calais. Our job was to destroy the launching ramps for these. The launching ramp was like a ski upside down, and it would come out of a hole and launch with a rocket assist. Our target, my first mission on Christmas Eve 1943, was to attack these launching ramps so that London wouldn't have to suffer another attack by Germans. We had to fly relatively low because the targets are small and camouflaged and hard to find. So, but the anti-aircraft defense guns were the 40 millimeters could reach to 12,000, so we flew about 14,000. But we were very vulnerable to flak. Our normal mission was about 21,000 feet, where the German 88 could pretty well tear us up. But on this particular mission, we were flying low, comparatively speaking, and vulnerable to flak. The Germans at these sites had them well concealed, well concealed, so that we couldn't find them. And they had anti-aircraft guns, but they didn't fire at us as long as we were looking for the target. Once we had bombs away, an angry blast of flak burst right above our number 3 engine. We got a skirt blast from this shell. If it had been below the engine, I wouldn't be here today. Gary?
I'll just read out that. Can everybody hear me? Everybody in the back can hear me? Okay, this begins right after the bombs away on the first mission. Bomb bay clear, confirmed the radio operator. Bomb bay doors closing, continued the bombardier as he moved the door control to the closed position. Fighters at 9 o'clock, yelled the left waist gunner. Ball turned to pilot. That ain't no fighter, that's flak. I just saw gun flashes in those woods. Angry black burst of flak appeared above the number 3 engine. The bursts were shaped like black boxing gloves thrust through a ring of black oily smoke. The blast raked Katie with jagged metal and concussion. She lurched to the right and fell out of formation, shaking from the blood. The bombardier and navigator were blown back into the flight deck companion. Up in the cockpit, shattered plexiglass was everywhere. The right side window beside the co-pilot's head was shattered and punctured. Denny, the co-pilot, slumped in the center aisle, restrained by his seatbelt. Bill's skylight had a big hole right above his head. He was slumped over the controls, the black helmet down over his face, and a small dent on the right side. I didn't do that. The intercom soon became jammed with frantic calls from the green crew. What in the heck was that? Clear the intercom, screamed the authoritative voice of Jack Timmy, the crew chief. The pilot and co-pilot are out cold. Who's flying the plane? Clear the intercom. Top turret to pilot. You guys okay? Should we bail out? I'm coming forward. Hang on, sir, Jack called as Katie continued to bank right. Concussion and blow to the helmet stunned both pilots and practically knocked Denny out of his seat. That's the co-pilot. Finally, Bill regained control of the plane and increased power to rejoin the formation. Pilot and crew, we've taken a flak burst, he said weakly. Navigator to pilot, bombardier has been hit in the leg. He's wounded and bleeding. Denny to co-pilot, are you okay? I think so, the disoriented co-pilot responded, brushing plexiglass from his flight suit and feeling himself for wounds or blood. Bill was doing the same thing. Jack was checking both of them and helping get their equipment back in order. Sir, you're hurt, he said to the pilot, with a dent in your helmet. Just a bump on my head, that dang helmet. I thought I was blind when it fell down over my eyes. Don't sweat me, Jack, I'm okay. Go down and help Don. Bill was very concerned about Don Wilson, because a serious wound at high altitude can cause deadly shock. Navigator to pilot, over. This is the pilot, go ahead. Looks like his leg was cut by a piece of plexiglass rather than flak. We bandaged it, the bleeding stopped. He may need a couple of stitches, but it's nothing real bad. Roger, Navigator, and still going to get the medics to meet us when we land. Don insisted that his wound wasn't bad enough to report when they got back to land. The Hello Sinew, which was the base control. I have wounded aboard. Cleared for immediate landing. Jack fired a flare which indicated there was a wounded man aboard. The ambulance would follow them down the runway and the medics would take Don away from the plane. And when they taxied towards Katie's landing pad, the crew chief said, "You sure made a mess of my plane." Dad, my father says, "I made a mess of your airplane. That was 188 hit that put almost 200 holes in the airplane."
That was our first mission, and I recall taxiing back after landing, and actually, of course, we got the noses busted in the windows around the cockpit. The crowd watching the plane go by. This was the first mission of our group, and we were the first state battle damage. And those guys were watching us to see just how bad it was. Well, it wasn't too bad. Don showed up a little later with a band-aid on his leg, but he did get the Purple Heart. That covers the portion about the V1. Now we'll go to our second mission, which was to Bordeaux. Now on this mission, flying from here, we flew out over the Atlantic, about 100 miles west of German-occupied France, down to Bordeaux. Bordeaux is right here. We had about 18, maybe 19 planes in the formation, and we were still sort of shocked from this one 88 millimeter flew in hell out of it. But the mission to Bordeaux, we were going after a 4-engine German plane, FW-200 Condos that were helping the submarine patrols in the Atlantic by spotting American ship convoys. Let's see, let me find myself here. Okay, we were tail end Charlie on this mission. That means we were right at the back end of this formation. Right here, these three planes. Tail end Charlie, and no escort. Altitude about 15,500 feet, which was still low. Now, an old-time barnstorming pilot, an old guy, 20 years old, was also my wingman, my left wingman. And he had a lot of experience flying in the States. And he approached me and he says, Bill, he says, we can do some evasive action if we get a fighter attacks. And I said, well, I'm locked in. I'm leading this element and I can't move around too much. We might have a little bit of collision, so negative. So in the meantime, my wingman, the one all the way over half on the chart, aborted the mission. He had mechanical trouble and it didn't show up. So there's the element leader in me. And so we headed for Bordeaux. Flight over the water was uneventful. And we crossed the coast at Bordeaux and picked up fighters. They were flying in a straight line echelon, 109s, perfect formation. It was like an air show. I mean, these guys had been fighting for years. They were pros. They knew what they were doing, and we were green as grass. But we had something they hadn't encountered previously. That was the chin turret on the G model B-17. They came out beside us. We're here, no escort, pulled up in front and started peeling off, coming head on through us. About 40 or 50 of them. But we had about 40 50 caliber machine guns shooting at them. So they decided that that wasn't a very good idea. So they went back to tail and decided to make a tail attack. And as they turned around, my gunners were calling them out, and we were saying, "Where are the fighters? Where are the fighters?" The tail gun got on them and was going to whip. So I called. I said, "Now we're going to use the evasive bounce. I'm going to bounce and slide when these guys shoot us." Jerry?
Suddenly, a bomber in the lead squadron took a direct hit in the cockpit. Plane flying directly above and to the right of Katie rolled to the left like an errant dancer in a stage routine. Then he saw it coming and punched Bill in the shoulder, pointed out the danger of gravity controls.
My apologies, everybody.
I was one page ahead of myself. Tail gunner, do you see those fighters? Yes, sir, they're buzzing fast now, said the tail gunner, Bill Wilson, age 17, a kid from St. Louis. Only his outstanding marksmanship got him through gunnery school, but the young, unsettled, and sometimes wild youngster was manning Katie's tail turret. Top turret, check your guns and test fire. Katie shudders as each of the gunners fired a few rounds to check and warm their guns. Tail to pilot. Fighters at 6 o'clock high and closing fast. They formed into lines of 6 to 10 planes and are heading towards us wingtip to wingtip. This is top turret. I can't bring my guns to bear. I'm blocked by the rudder. Ball turret, can you get them? No, Jack. They're a little too high for me, and those blanky blanks know it. Can see them, but my guns won't come to bear yet. This is tail. Those blanky blanks are ganging up on me. What should I do? Yell. Quick, somebody, here they come. This is top turret. Settle down, kid. Just pick one and shoot till it flames, then pick another. At this point, Bill noticed Kurt and Barnstormer waving and signaling. Pilot to crew. Okay, we're going to use the bounce and slide tactic we talked about. Tail to pilot. Roger. But don't move till after I shoot. It's 10 to 1 back here. Realizing that they were up against a new version of B-17, the Germans had changed his tactics. Bill Wilson gripped his gun handles firmly, pointed the sights at Jerry, and waited. The kid was scared but determined. As the fighter he chose loomed larger in the ranks of his gun sight, he tracked it and remembered. He thought of the school bully who repeatedly pounded him into the dirt because he couldn't accept the bully's dominance. But in this particular time and place, he was in his element and had his strength and his guns. He glanced around the cramped tail position from the side glass a few inches from his head to the faceplate close to his oxygen mask, pressed his chest against the armor plate, and grabbed the handles to his guns. This is my backyard and nobody's going to take it away. He watched the fighter fill the outer ring of the gun sight, and he selected the wrong one and get a free shot at him. Then the enemy's wingtips filled the outer ring. Some are pulling off. They're in range, he yelled into the intercom. The tail section of Katie shuddered, and the noise of his guns was deafening as he fired the twin 50s. Bill counted to 3 and skidded left. Small puffs of white 20mm burst filled the air where Katie had been only a moment before. Harry was curled in the fetal position, feet in stirrups that controlled the turret's horizontal movement. This is the belly turret. Hands on gun handles that control vertical movement. His guns were aimed almost straight down. He was hung by a seatbelt facing the ground under the plane. The plane shook again as the ball turret fired, and Bill counted and then skidded. Bombardier the pilot watched that lead element, shell cases and clips coming out of those planes ahead. Watched the chatter, tail gunner excitedly. Here they come again. Katie shook, bounced, and then skidded. Barnstormer crossed under the skidded wildly as she took hits in the left wing. He faltered and dropped back. Her wingman's been hit. His number 2 engine's on fire. Barnstormer slowly lost airspeed. He considered slowing, but also knew that was foolhardy. Kurt quickly was the Barnstormer, feathered the propeller and shut down the flaming engine. The flames subsided. He had full power in the other 3 as the battle continued. If you lost position, you were dead. 10 more lining up. They're just out of range, moaned the tail gunner. Katie shuddered, then he counted and bounced. It was Barnstormer slowly pulling back into place. They fought Jerry on out to the coast, and the enemy persisted. Bill bounced again as the cannon burst raked the right wing. The Yellow Noses were adjusting for the moves and hitting home, determined to shoot the damaged bombers out of formation before they got out over the Bay of Biscay. Pilot and crew report damage. Tail, no time this place is wrecked, but okay. Ball, our bellies dry, no oil leaks. Roger, we're still flying on all 4s. The sky around them was full of treasures and small cannon bursts as the battle proceeded out over the Bay of Biscay. The tail gunner was performing well. The kid was tired, emotionally spent, scared, and almost out of ammo. Here they come again, he screamed in panic. 10 this time, low on ammo. Jack, I need help. Jack, he sobbed, help me, Mama, help me. Oh God, fear plus fatigue quivered through him as deafening cannon burst ripped Katie's dorsal fin. But he had friends in that B-17. He had 2 fine machine guns, and he could strike back at the yellow-nosed cats that were trying to bully him. Short burst, son, make them count. Jack's calm voice came back. We're depending on you. You can handle them. Blanket lights. Tail guns fired. This time top and ball also fired as close as they could to the rear. Bill realized that the 2 bombers remaining in his lead flight and the others left in the group must be brought closer to the action if Katie and Barnstormer were to survive. So he opened the throttle slowly and skidded left as Barnstormer crossed under. White puffs of cannon shell burst and appeared where the pair had been as they flew far out over the Bay of Biscay. Stubbornly, the Germans pressed in, and the kid shot one down with the last of his ammo. Then Jerry flew right up into the bomber formation, firing all the way. He got in Katie's other wingman position and looked Bill right in the eye, so close that the gunners couldn't fire for fear of hitting other bombers. For a split second, the yellow-nosed pilot and Bill exchanged glances. Bill lifted his tortured body erect, his head up proudly, and leered at the black helmet and yellow scarf. The German acknowledged their eye contact with a clenched fist. Bill gave him the middle finger. Got another one that time, but my guns were empty, called the tail gunner. This is Top Turret, report on those fighters. Don't see any in close right now. Did you see that crazy blank, Nazi blank fly right up into our wing position, yelled Jack? Roger, Jack. How about that crazy blank, brave Nazi? Bill gave him the finger. Did you really give him the finger, sir? Damn right. I didn't want him to know how I really felt. Did you see all those marks on the side of the plane? Roger, they were killed, weren't they? Yes, they were.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. Now, we were headed away from the target, and we went out and around and came back here. We had about 17, 18 planes going into the target. When we hit the coast out, we had 11 with us and a couple of stragglers. But we made it back to England fine. Now, this is our effort to show you what it was like in a B-17. I finished my combat mission on D-Day over Omaha Beach. And at 7:32, they raised the missions to 35. So I got my 30th mission 2 minutes before they raised it. No, that's all I have. Rob, thank you very much.
Those of you who have been here before know that at this point we open to the audience for questions and answers. And I will bring the mic to you so that the rest of the folks don't have to have me or Bill repeat the question. So first person with a hand in the air gets the mic. You almost won a bid there. All right, yes, sir.
Sir, with the model out there, the G model, with a full bomb load, what was the highest altitude that y'all could fly? Understanding that once you dump the load, you could go probably higher, but with the load, what was the highest?
Well, we usually carried 6 500-pound bombs and a load of gas, and the highest that we flew, because of weather, was 27,000 feet, and that was very cold. You see, the temperature of the air goes down 2 degrees per 1,000 feet. So 27,000 feet, you're, 54 degrees cooler than it is on the ground, or something like that. Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you.
When you were flying, did you have the Northern Light bomb sight at that time?
We did, but when the B-17 was designed, it was designed as a fortress to fight on its own with the Northern bomb sight, very accurate bomb sight, and capable of precision bombing. But the Germans came up with a defensive force of fighters that compromised that. So we flew a formation like this. Only the leader had the bomb sight and one other plane in the formation. So my bombardier was very frustrated because he had been trained to use the bomb sight and set up in the nose of that thing and ignore the world and drop the bombs, and he didn't have a bomb sight. Actually, he did on our 13th mission. We led a wing, 60 planes on the 13th mission.
Were there many fighters shot down?
Pardon?
Were there-
Any? We claimed, I believe, about 16. We got credit for 6. And keep in mind that the tail gunner, this guy would testify this, those Germans were attacking about 40 or 50 tail gun machines, tail guns. So everybody was shooting them that could shoot. But unless you got a direct line, as you know if you've hunted or fished used guns, unless you got a direct line and led it properly, well, you didn't hit much. But there was a lot of metal coming out behind that formation, including 50 caliber shells, clips, and bullets. We actually stopped claiming after a while. It just got to be too much, but only about 25% of those claims were verified. And the guys who made the best story had the best description. You know, did he catch fire? Did he bail out? Did the canopy come off? They were the ones that got the credit. And this guy can tell you about that. He probably, how many did you guys get? 5. This was at Schweinfurt. They lost 60 planes, and 100 of them were so damaged that they didn't fly again. There was 150 Germans shot down at Schweinfurt. But that would be discounted, as I say, because too many people were shooting. Frank? Yeah, I probably speak for a lot of my fellow naval aviators, and we were, after reading the book and me knowing your stories personally, are absolutely impressed with the brutality of the combat, that quite unlike what a lot of us experience in modern flying. But I think also a lot of us naval aviators would like to know how many different nationalities of women did you date? Rob, you put that up to that. The two of you have been landing on aircraft carriers too much. I never tried to land a B-17 on an aircraft carrier, but let's put it this way, I've been there and done that. Yes, sir. I was trained as a single engine pilot. This T6 they fly at 12 o'clock. I love that airplane. Learned to fly in it, and I flew it all over the United States. It's a wonderful airplane. It's 70 years old. The B-17 was a pilot's airplane. It felt like a pilot. I flew it like a pilot. So did my co-pilot, who also was trained single engine. But not to get into too much detail, we used to kid that, see, the B-24 had a Davis wing, and it fell forward. It didn't fly. that was our opinion. But the B-17 actually had double skin structure when it was built in 1933, or designed and built later. But 10 years later, the G model was more advanced. But if you look in this book, I have a picture. I probably can't find it now. I took a bomb through my wing right behind the number 2 engine over Berlin. And it was, ordinarily, the plane wing would have come off. But this was a cluster. It was a bomb, 500 thermite bombs, little small fire bombs, in a wooden cluster with sheet metal around. And it wasn't armed when it hit my wing, and it slid off the back of the wing, messed it up like that. The plane still flew normally, it still landed normally. But the B-17 would take terrific punishment. There's a case just recently on television with German ramming the rear end of the B-17 and messing up the control surface. The pilot was able to land that airplane. They rammed the B-24 and cut the nose right off of it. It was immense. But the plane would take an awful lot of damage. My first mission, we had about over 200 holes in that airplane. But as I said, the flak burst was a skirt flaps. In other words, we only got about the tail of it. If it had been below the airplane, we would have blown the wing off.
Question. The friendly fire, did you take much friendly fire from each other, these tight bomber formations?
I have to tell you that the flexible guns were very dangerous, the waist guns. He'll tell you that. My crew chief, one time recently, I was talking to him, and he said, Bill, he said, your plane was the only one that I worked on and came home with bullet holes in the gas tanks. And I said, those are ours. Because the flex, if you guys who fired Steed or shot birds, you had to lead, And when a waist gun, if a plane's coming in toward another target, the waist gun is leading it, and sometimes when he's leading it, he would hit another B-17. We had one case, we used to empty our guns every now and then to keep them warm because it frees up. But one case where the chin turret guns were pointed 9 degrees, and the bombardier test fired and shot down another B-17. So we did have friendly fire. Now, as far as fighters were concerned, we told the fighters, we said, it's very simple. If you point your guns, if you point your nose at us, we're going to shoot you. And they didn't like it, but because actually a P-51 and ME-109 look a lot alike. P-47 and 190 look a lot alike. And if you're talking about closure head on, you're talking about 550 mile an hour rate of closure. We couldn't really tell the difference. And our gunners would, am I correct, sir? Our gunners would shoot at anything that threatened.
After a mission, I know you had debriefing. How did they do that? Were the photos taken as you were accomplishing the mission?
When we landed after a mission,
Yeah.
we had a debriefing. We went before a professional interrogator, and they made a record of the mission and listened to the claims, etc. of each one. We also received during the mission we had a chocolate bar. When we got back, we had a shot of bourbon. Medicinal bourbon, you know.
What was the deepest penetration into Germany that you had? And were you being attacked by fighters the entire way?
I think it was on my 12th mission. We went to Poland. We flew across Denmark. Let's see.
Two towers was 10 hours and 50 minutes.
This is Denmark. Over here, and came down somewhere, 2,000. Poland, 10 hours and 50 minutes. And some of the guys ran out of gas on the way home. That was important. And unless you flew good formation, you used a lot of gas. It was a trick to, you're flying formation constantly, trying to keep wing on them, and you're using your throttles. The trick was to lock the airboards and use the inboards and just take it easy on gas.
Hi, Bill. Could you tell us a little bit about your selection and training for pilot training and how you learned to fly the B-17 and how you went over to Europe and the early part of your career? And also maybe a little bit later in your career, like did you serve with the B-29s in Korea or Vietnam?
The B-29 was a mean airplane. Had bad engine problems. But I was the first at first they required 2 years of college to go to pilot training. I was in class 43D, the first high school graduates to get into pilot training. We trained, the training was a year. I think it was down to about 8 months by the time I got there. And we went to pre-flight, primary, basic, and then advanced. And after I left pilot training, I was ready for Eddie Rickenbacker thing. They sent me to a base that had P38s, at least they said it did. When I got there, I looked around, I didn't see any P38s, or only P17s. So the next day when we checked in, we said, where are the P38s? They said, we don't have any P38s, you're a B-17 co-pilot. So they made me a P-17 co-pilot, but I was fortunate enough to check out as a first pilot after 60 hours in the B-17, and then they gave me a crew. The total hours I have about 1,250, 250 some combat hours, and about 200 in training. But I didn't have any transition between the single engine and the four engine. Most of the guys had twin engine transitions. But they needed, after Swanson, they needed guys. And I was one of them.
How'd you do bomb damage assessment? How accurate do you think it was?
Pardon?
How did you do bomb damage assessment after mission to have reliability and what you thought you hit?
I'm sorry, I can't understand.
After you did a mission,
He was wrong. Well, okay, of course, when the crew was wounded or damaged, you had to follow them from taking care of them, keeping them alive and warm until we could get them back home. There were cases where they even bailed over wounded guys in Germany, hoping that they could survive. There was something else I wanted to say about it.
Hey, Pop, what he wants to know is how they assess the effectiveness of your bombing, what bomb damage to the target.
We had a gun camera in the Bombay that took pictures of the bomb, and they analyzed those photographs like reconnaissance. They also sent reconnaissance in to them. Now, for example, my first plane after the third mission, it was shot down in the North Sea, not crew flying. And after the second mission, it took them a week to get my plane back in shape. And while your plane, actually, this early in the war, they issued B-17, and I had to sign a requisition for B-17 with 4 engines. I still have a copy of it. But when I was not operational, we flew whatever was I probably flew everyone in the group at different times.
In reference to your figures that you were talking about losses, the total World War II air losses were 79,264.
Right.
That was personnel out of the Air Force.
It was a big difference, you see. When we got shot down, we were prisoners in Germany. The German defensive guys, they could bail out. Some of them got shot down half a dozen or so times and came back or continued.
Of all the German fighters, which was possibly the most fearsome or the most destructive? Which did you fear the most? Like the Black Wolf, the 109, any one particular plane was more effective?
Well, they had all different equipped airplanes. The best fighters were the ones with 20 millimeter guns, and as Gary pointed out, that 50 caliber had about 300-yard range on them. We become effective. Their shell was explosive 20 millimeter shells. Ours was a long-piercing shell. So we could hit them before they hit us, and that's what we used the evasion tactics at Bordeaux.
Effective range from 50 to 1,000, cannons 800. That's when they were doing the bounce.
Did they all carry similar types of weapons?
They
109, the same weapon that...
Oh, they had specially equipped planes up to 30 millimeter guns on them, 190s and 109s, and special engines. When we got the P-51, they came up with a 109 that would outclimb the P-51 with a different engine. But they varied. Standard was just 20 millimeter.
You indicated a few minutes ago that you flew a lot of B-17. Was there a lot of difference between one and the other and the other?
Yes.
Were they all like twins?
Well, they were all cloned. They were all G models. We were the first group over there with the G model. But some of them, for example, had hydraulic-driven wastegates on the engines, and they would freeze up, and you had to constantly move the throttles to keep the oil flowing to those wastegates. The later ones had a dial, an electronic wastegate, and you could fly the airplane without it, and you didn't have to worry about it losing an engine. See, if that wastegate got stuck open, you had no high altitude ability with that engine. It would only go up by 16, 18,000 feet.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have one more question, and I've actually got it back here. If you have a question after this gentleman, then we'll ask you to do it privately with Bill afterward.
Question, on one mission you were talking about how your tail gunner was running out of ammunition. In that type of battle, were you able to move or 50 cal ammunition from the forward guns that weren't firing as much to the guns that were firing more?
They would, on occasion, very seldom, because it was so difficult. Keep in mind that the tail gun bullets were dropping out of the tail of the airplane. Now his were in the floor of the airplane, and you could, you got standing on them, slipping on them. But the chin turret, the ball turret, and the tail gun, the shells dropped out of the airplane. Now, the waist gunners would take initial ammunition to the tail gun if it was possible, but it wasn't easy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like all of you to thank Bill one more time before we do the thank you. Two quick announcements. Bill is going to sign some books if you care to purchase one of his books. I'll tell you, I read it in a day and a half. I got yelled at by the missus for not doing the argument. So I really wanted to do the argument. And now I'm going to introduce the director of the museum, Mr. Gary Powers. He's going to talk to you for about 40 to 50 seconds.
Just a little bit. Hi, Gary Powers, Museum Director. Thank you all very much for coming out and supporting our programs. I'm going to go down a few things that will be happening today for your entertainment and enjoyment. In addition to the book sales, the cost is $21. Cash or check will be up here. Credit card purchases will be in the gift store. Do the purchase first, then bring your receipt here to get the book. That way we'll have a nice flow going. From 12:30 to 1:30.